Yes.
Members of the press, ladies and gentlemen, as you are aware, the World Health Organization, in its 65th Situation Report, dated 25th March 2020, recommended the implementation of remote working practices such as the teleworking during the pandemic as a measure to prevent the transmission of the disease between employees. The World Health Organization also indicated that employers and employees have a crucial role to play in stopping the COVID-19 and reducing the impact of the disease on society by creating a COVID-safe workplaces. Other measures include implementing remote work practices, adherence to social distancing, holding fewer in-person meetings, restricting the number of visitors entering the workplace, clean and well-ventilated work spaces, among others. The workplace presents a significant high-risk area of transmission for COVID-19, which may lead to potential deaths. Employees may be untracked carriers for their families at home and the community. Reducing the number of employees in the workplaces is aimed at minimizing physical contact among employees and clients during the pandemic. This is an inevitable precautionary measure which has been taken by many countries to avoid loss of lives. Countries such as the United Kingdom, Italy, Germany, South Africa, just to mention but a few, have gone into total lockdown. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, following the continued spread of the coronavirus, subsequent declaration of the coronavirus disease as a pandemic by World Health Organization, His Excellency the President directed Cabinet Office that ministries, provinces, and spending agencies submit schedules of essential staff that could be considered to remain on duty during the period of the pandemic. Schedules of non-essential staff that could also be considered to report on duty on a rotational basis or work from home, and also to indicate the activities that could be considered for suspension during the period of the pandemic. Submissions from the ministries, provinces, and spending agencies were provided, and these demonstrated the preparedness of their institutions to operate with minimum staff in a bid to mitigate against possible infection or spread of the COVID-19 in government institutions which have been submitted now, while being mindful that government needed to continue to provide basic social and economic services, and as well as basic food basket. The schedules indicated that essential staff will be on duty throughout the pandemic period. The schedules also clearly indicated that the periods that non-essential employees will be on duty and those that will be at home on a rotational basis. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, as head of the public service and in consultation with His Excellency the President, Dr. Edgar Chagwa Lungu, the work arrangements have been approved and segmented into 4 categories. Category number 1, ministries, provinces, and spending agencies that will maintain their full staff complement. And this has been approved that the staff be divided into teams that will work on a rotational basis. These ministries include, among others, the Ministry of Commerce, Trade and Industry, Higher Education, Mines and Minerals Development. Category number 2, ministries, provinces, and spending agencies that have divided their staff into essential workers and non-essential workers. All essential workers will be required to work throughout the period. These consist of ministers, permanent secretaries, directors, and identified vital employees. The non-essential workers have been further divided into support staff and non-support staff. The support staff work on a rotational basis, while non-support staff work from home. For example, the Ministry of Home Affairs has indicated that all ununiformed officers under the Zambia Police Service, Zambia Correction Service, and Department of Immigration constitute essential staff and will be required to continue providing the critical services. I repeat, these are uniformed staff. On the other hand, it has been approved that the ministry's civilian staff will operate on a rotational basis. The Ministry of Defense also has classified the civilian staff as non-essential employees who can operate on a rotational basis. The Ministry of Energy have identified the provision of petroleum and energy as critical, and hence the proposal that employees in the Department of Petroleum and Energy continue to provide the critical service with support of some officers from accounts and procurement units. The Ministry of Information and Broadcasting Services has also classified staff into essential and non-essential groups with the aim of ensuring an uninterrupted flow of information to the public during the pandemic. Category number 3, ministries, provinces, and spending agencies that have been identified that during this period their core duties will be significantly minimized and can therefore afford to let part of their staff stay at home, possibly some of them taking leave. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs, for instance, has indicated that 50% of the staff will be allowed to stay at home for an initial period of 14 days, on the understanding that they will be on call at all times. The ministry has also indicated that its primary function is to deal with the international community, most of whose governments or organizations have declared lockdowns. Consequently, both Zambian missions abroad and the foreign missions accredited to the Republic of Zambia have drastically scaled down with their operations. Category number 4. Provincial administrations have identified as critical during the pandemic for the inspection of public places to ensure compliance to public health measures that have been put in place by government. Staff who are engaged in the inspection of public places and also involved in the cleaning of markets and public toilets will be required to report for duty on a daily basis. Administrative staff will be working on a rotational basis. This is in recognition that the provincial, district, and local authorities are frontline administrations who have the responsibility to take all that is reasonable and measures to facilitate and implement as prescribed by the National Disaster Management Council of Ministers. Activities that could be considered for suspension during the pandemic. Ministries, provinces, and spending agencies identified critical activities within their institutions that should continue to be implemented during the pandemic. Such activities include the provision of health and medical care, supply and distribution of water, provision of sewerage and fire services, provision of petroleum and energy, provision of security, law and order. These will continue to run. Activities that require face-to-face interactions will be considered for suspension during the pandemic. These include meetings, conferences, seminars and workshops, field visits, auction sales, state functions, traditional ceremonies, and other non-essential events. The Ministry of National Development Planning has indicated that employees will be facilitated with internet connectivity to ensure continuity of work when employees are working from their homes. Other controlling officers have indicated that electronic platforms will be enhanced during the period to ensure continuation of operations. In conclusion, from the submissions made by the ministries, provinces, and spending agencies, it is evident that institutions have thoroughly analyzed the working arrangements that would enable the institutions to operate smoothly during the period of the COVID-19 pandemic, with the barest minimum staff. This is demonstrated through the identification of essential employees, those that can work from home, those that can work on rotational basis, as well as assignments that can be put on hold. In this regard, the model of work arrangements to curb the spread of COVID-19 can be summarized basically as follows. Core team of essential employees that work on a daily basis. Non-essential employees that operate on a rotational basis. Non-essential employees that operate from home. Encouraging staff who opt to take leave to do so. The proposed working arrangements be for a period of the initial 14 days, effective today, 13th March 2019, subject to review as the disease evolves. And the circular will be issued to direct responsible officers on the interim working arrangements. Arising from the above and the gravity of the current situation, there is need to maintain only vital employees in the public service, which are needed to provide essential basic social and economic services, as well as a basic food basket, as recommended by the ministries, provinces, and spending agencies, and as I've said, as approved by His Excellency Dr. Edgar Chagwa Lungu. I thank you.